Hello, welcome to Band of Badgers. Hopefully everything's working. Normally Lee is behind the screen telling us that the sound and everything is working. So I'll give it a sec to make sure everything is there, and hopefully it's good. But anyway, I'm Dave. Welcome to Band of Badgers. I'm your host for this evening, and this is a live Q&A with Free League's very own Matthias Lilja. I hope I said that right. That's fine. There we go. And we're going to be having a look at Symbaroum. You can see, look, there's my hand. You can see all kind of bits and pieces that we've got going on. It's just disappeared that. There we go. And we're going to talk about Symbaroum because it's been moving over to the 5e edition in terms of game rule set. So we've got loads of Symbaroum stuff to talk about. We've got a few giveaways to do as well. So keep an eye on everything that we're doing. But joining me as co-host is Lee from our Vampire stream, and also known as the Emergency Elf. So first of all, Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Cool, good. Lee, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm great.
Fantastic.
Glad to be back.
And you can see we've got a bit of a new layout here. We're using some kind of artwork and motifs, all from Symbaroum. So we're nice at home in our Symbaroum environment. We've got these nice frames. And we've got some artwork over that far side. You'll see some artwork. And in the box down there, let's point down that way, you'll see some product shots and some spreads and all kinds of things going on. We've got Disco moderating in chat. Lee will also be keeping an eye on chat and basically doing everything that I miss. So I'm well supported. We've got a good team. So if you have if you see anything, as we mentioned stuff, this is going to go hectic as always. If you see anything, we'll put links and all kinds of goodies into live chat as well. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you. That's it. Right. So we're going to crack on already. Yeah, I've already checked the questions. Yes. Thank you very much. There we go. Right. So, Matt.
Yes.
I have absolutely fallen in love with Symbaroum. But for the people who in live chat who are watching this or on YouTube watching this, can you tell us what is Symbaroum all about?
Sure. It's a fantasy game that we think of it as dark, deep, and deadly. Mm-hmm. We're trying to go for a simple rule set and then have a complex world that you can get lost in. The basic premise is basically that nature is the creative force and humanity is the disciplinary force in the world. And when that goes overboard, corruption is created. And that has, of course, happened in the setting repeatedly and will continue to happen. Yeah, other than that, you can, of course, do your own fantasy, whatever you want to play, often treasure hunters or other things. But there's a backstory, and we think of the world as layered with levels of truth. So you can really dive into it. And yeah, it's a dark and deadly place, but you don't have to play it all serious if you don't want to, but you can.
Fantastic. I mean, the stuff I've looked at, I've got the I never remember this. The Throne of Thorns. I always want to say it the other way around. The Throne of Thorns adventure, the Advanced Player's Guide, the DM's Guide. Everything is just superb. The artwork. For those of you watching on Twitch now, you can see on screen. There's a couple of spread pages from the books themselves. The artwork is amazing. You mentioned, like, part of the setting of Symbaroum is fighting this darkness, this corruption that's all around. How did you? How was that created? Where was that idea coming from?
Well, I think the idea itself is pretty old. I think it's an archetypical story. It's been around humanity for a long time. We actually thought we came up with it, and then we saw Princess Mononoke, an anime movie that presents basically the same premise. So we happily stealing from whoever originally came up with it. It's probably a long time ago. But it suits the idea that we are all in this game. We're all agents of one metaphysical principle or another, whether we agree to it or not. We can even be. We can say we are and align with it, or we can just do what we normally do, but we still run someone else's errands, in a sense, in a sort of metaphysical sense. So that was the backdrop of or the idea. You as a player can of course say that you don't care and you don't serve anyone or anything, but you most likely promote one of these forces anyway through your actions, even if you say you don't. That's sort of the universe you're in. So there are priests and treasure hunters and wizards and whatnot. And they all have their own ideas of how this world works and what is good and what is bad. But you can't escape corruption. It's going to be there, and you're probably going to cause it quite a lot. Sometimes even in the trying to fight it, you're going to maybe make it worse. That's
you mentioned one of the key words that you mentioned there. You mentioned treasure hunting. Now, when we play, let's say, other fantasy-based role-playing games, accumulating treasure or treasure as an award is what seems to entice people. Is treasure hunting one of the key driving forces behind the hero's characters? Because there is a lot about discovering this ancient civilization. So, for example, the starter box puts you in Davokar Forest.
Yes.
And your mission is to go into the forest, and as you go deeper and deeper, you find more corruption, more darkness, things that are more deadly. But at the start of the forest, at the southern edge of the forest, there's some things which have already been discovered, and you can go there and explore those, I guess, as lower levels. How does the treasure hunting expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, there are real treasure hunters that they're out for old Symbarium gold coins. That's what they're in it for. But I think treasure should be understood in a wider sense. A lot of people seek lore or artifacts or other things that can give them an edge, or they can learn more about the world as they do it. So it's in a wider sense that you do it. I think the metaphor of the forest is you're leaving the land where you can see far and have a good understanding of what exists, and moving to this place where everything is close to your face and you don't really know what's behind the next tree. It's the old idea that you're moving from order into chaos, and that's where opportunity and danger awaits. You can't have one without the other.
Oh.
There's no opportunity with no danger in it. In the game, at least. I don't know about this world. I spend most of my time in games. But it's a good analogy what you want to do, right? You want to find that opportunity, you go, and you can play whatever character you want. You don't have to be doing it for the gold, and the world doesn't really force you to pick a side in this fight, but it's gonna come up anyway. One of the more, when people start playing the game, they often run into elves early, and you might, as a GM, you might want to explain to people that elves they're not your friends.
Mm-hmm.
They see you as a disease, most like, or at least a threat, because they planted this forest to keep the evil at bay.
See, that was a great thing when you're reading these books where you've got the elves in that kind of position. The player characters aren't, humans, elves, and dwarves. The player characters are a type of basically humans, but also goblins, ogres, and undead. Yes. And that's a huge twist, and I love that kind of aspect. Can you go more? Why were those character races chosen?
Well, I think one part of it is we want the world to be complex, but we want you to explore it as you go and not have to read up on it beforehand. You can actually start as an elf if you use, let's say, the Advanced Player's Guide.
Yeah.
You need a good reason to be one of the elves that go against their kin, but you can. You can be in exile, or you can be slightly of a darker type of elf. But the idea is that if you play a goblin, or they don't know or care much, so you don't have to read up on the world to start playing. Ogres have more or less amnesia built into the character. They just show up from somewhere. People don't know where they come from. They are huge and strong, but they don't really have a past. So they get an identity from whoever they meet first. That might be a witch in the forest, or some farmers that need help farming. So you don't really have to read up on the world. And if you play a human, you probably come from the kingdom of Umbria, which is also, you're new to this place. You don't understand the Davokar forest, and you as a player don't have to pretend that you do, because your PC don't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's partly why we started. We chose the aesthetic because it fits the sort of fantasy with the twist that we started with characters, and if you play like an undead, you might have been a murder victim and you woke up again. So you have a good mission. So who killed me? And why did I deserve it? And maybe you don't remember as much. So all of them are built on the premise that you can start playing and learn about this world and not have to read up on it beforehand. That's what's.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you've played a couple of characters or campaigns, maybe you want to play an elf because now you understand more about the place. It would be because the elves are pretty well aware of, even if you're not old, the older elves have told you the stories about the evils of Symbaroum and how men are easily corrupted and all that. So you would probably know that if you started out as an elf. You can, but we don't assume people want to read a lot before playing, rather than going to the world and explore it and learn as they go.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Sure. Is this a campaign or a group of one-shots, or what's going on with what we've got in front of us and overall, basically?
Specifically with books. Go on.
No, both the books on the table there, Wrath of the Warden and Mother of Darkness, they're both installments in a campaign that's called.
Yeah. The audience can't see these yet because I've hidden them.
Good.
But these are the adventure ones. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. Good.
However, the 5th edition
they're
book.
installments of a campaign called the Thorns. They're adventures and setting books, and you can play them independently of each other, but they also form a grander campaign. We think of them as a chronicle where the world evolves through each of these. The players have a lot of choice and they can affect the outcome, but some things will happen and actors in the world will act regardless of whether the players do. Mm-hmm. The Queen Corinthia of Ambria, she has a plan to retake the throne of thorns and sit upon it, and she's going to try to do that with whatever the PCs do, whether they try to help, hinder, or don't care. The next installment in the campaign is going to see the queen, she will have made a move, some kind of move. And of course, she's not the only one. There are several players in this.
I'm flicking through the books now. So this is book 4, The Mother of Darkness. Yes. The audience can now see that I'm flicking through, so I've made it big for them so they can see.
Yeah.
It is stunning. Each book is hardbacked, beautiful artwork, nice description on the back, and my favourite piece, 2 bookmarks, which comes in really, really handy when you need them.
Looks like we have another question. Have you taken any inspiration from the various myths and legends from around the world?
Yes, but not from any particular place, at least not consciously so. We try to, when we create games, we try to mix things that we think are cool rather than trying to do a wholesale Viking game. Mm-hmm. But I'm sure there are Viking themes or mythological themes that the Vikings would agree on in this. So yes, there are things like that. We've looked at, in some sense, you could people have found a lot of things, and some of them are actually correct. So it's part of the the Romans pushing into the forests of Germany and meeting the barbarians there. That's part of the. That's not the story, but it's one of the ideas that we've looked at. But the kingdom of Ambria has some likeness to Sweden in the early 17th century, where it's a strong central power crushes down on everything, including religion that doesn't like, or which means religion that doesn't support the region. So all Catholics were expelled early from Sweden because they had this idea of the Pope that didn't really, and the king didn't like that. because he wanted to be next to God, not have a pope in between them. So, stuff like that. You can pick up bits and pieces of history that make sense or could fit into a setting without turning it into a historical. We're not going for historical accuracy. That's not the point. We want to have a world that makes sense on its own, but we of course borrow from many places and in this world. So.
Yeah, I noticed when I was reading through it, it does seem to draw a lot from these Scandinavian elements that I noticed in it that culturally exist here. One of the themes that you talked about was the whole, it's not really a good versus evil sort of thing so much as it is like the order versus chaos, or the law versus the wild, and the whole reaping what you sow element of it. Everyone, it's this very holistic attitude that I see here living in Scandinavia. So you can see that throughout the books, that everyone sort of has their part, and everyone's actions impact everyone else. So I noticed that.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think if you want to go religiously, it's more pagan than Christian, or which means there is not really a discussion of not necessarily a discussion of good versus evil, as you said. It's more about powers that build and powers that tear down, and they both have their place. And if they're in balance, it sort of works. But if they don't, either side will create some sort of hell. I think that idea is older than the idea of then order usually becomes the idea of good, and chaos becomes the idea of evil. But I think most religions would also see that a world of total order would not be necessarily a good one, or just as a totally chaotic one where you can count on anything is probably also not that. So at least those mythological themes come into it. There are for sure people inside this world that is how we try to write it as every character in the world that we describe, they have an idea about how the world works. We're not saying that's how the world works. We say they have an idea. So if you meet the priest of Krios, which is basically the idea of the sun as the counterpoint to corruption, they see that they think about corruption as evil and themselves as good. No questions about it. But the world doesn't really take a stand on that. Just these people do. And if you disagree with them, they're going to see you as part of the problem. So you choose. And there are other sides. Again, the elves have this idea that if Symbaroum would reawaken, break free of the roots that now hold it down, the world would end. Well, that's the elves. You have lots of other groups saying that that's not the case. We just need to get those roots out of the way so we can do whatever is down there, right? So different groups have different ideas, and it's not at all clear if anything is absolutely true or just a version of it, depending on how you look at it. So that we've tried to, so more of a grayscale than black and white, even though there are people who see the world inside the world as black and white.
You mentioned like some of the monsters that are involved in Symbaroum, the monster categories, and now one of the popular questions are, how sexy are the monsters? How sexy are these monsters? Are these some of these original monsters? Are these based on myth? Is this based on popular fantasy role-playing games that we kind of know and love?
You'll get a bit of both, of course. I think we usually try to make. I think the designer standpoint is you want to give a glimpse of something that people recognize, and then when they look at it longer, it turns and it's not the same thing as you thought it were. That's how the elves, for instance, comes across. They're pretty elf-like in their behavior, except they're opposed to man. So that's sort of a twist. But some of the monsters are, if you look at what the Ambrians call barbarians that lived in this area for longer and understand the forest and what not to do, they have lots of taboos to not make the elves angry or awaken what's in there, but they can live there in a sort of a tough life, but a harmony with what's there. They call a lot of the monsters gods of the forest. So it can be a huge boar or a massive moose walking through the forest, and the barbarians would call it one of the gods. They might even sacrifice to it or worship it in some way, but it can also be super dangerous if you cross it.
Yeah.
So back to nature as having lots of power that is dangerous to humans if they don't understand it and treat it right. And then of course you can have that massive moose be infected by corruption through some act of humanity, most likely. And then they'll be really deadly and come for you. You don't even have, they will seek you out. So some of them are sort of, they're more folklore than classical fantasy in some sense, and they're tied to the setting and they have a function in the setting. They're not just there to be killed.
I'm just going to remind,
but that's not the point. Yeah.
I'm just going to remind the viewers, we have a competition going. If you would like to win a PDF copy of the core rulebook, just put in !free league into live chat and you'll have a chance to win. Plus, if anyone comes up with a really good question, this is why you should be writing questions into live chat. We might also reward you with a free PDF copy of the core rulebook. We might just be that generous. So keep those questions coming.
We got a new question from somebody who is new to the game. Will it feature D&D classes or will there be original classes?
That was a good question. The original game has been out for a while, and we just ran a Kickstarter for converting the game, taking the setting and moving it to 5e. The classes will be, they're all new and fitting with the setting, but they will also play well with 5e rules, with the exception of magic, which is one of those drivers of corruption in the game.
We'll come back to that. I have a question about magic.
Sure. We'll get back to that. But yeah, they're new classes that fit the setting, but they're built in the same way. And if they don't align perfectly, at least they rhyme with the classical 5e classes.
Because it's more of a game mechanic, isn't it? It's looking at how 5e has a game mechanic, which is the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, let's talk about the Symbaroum game mechanic. The original Symbaroum is where you've got you as a hero will roll to attack your opponent, but the GM doesn't roll back. In fact, you as the hero will roll your dice to check your defense as you're being attacked, which means that the GM actually doesn't have to roll any dice. And we've had discussions about this. If anyone's watched our shows before, we have topics on this where, you know, the GMs end up rolling the most dice because they go to every single player around the table, right? You, me, you, me, you, me, you, me, you, around the table. The GM ends up playing all the game.
Yes.
Now this way you kind of get to roll, and then it's on you as well. My defense wasn't good enough. I rolled poorly, which means my attacker can get in through my armor, past my shield, past my block, and it's a really interesting game mechanic. We haven't tried that on Badgers yet, but we have been speaking about it, and something we will be doing in the future on the Badgers channel. We will be playing the starter set as well as a few other adventures, but we'll be playing the starter set over the summer. So tune in and watch that with us as well, with pre-gen characters. So yeah, I
mean that's how I prefer to the GM is to not roll and just give people modifiers to what they roll, so that everything is player facing and nothing is hidden or secret in that way. So everybody knows what's at stake and what the roles are. And we built that into the original system. We're not going to do that default for 5e. We want to stick to the conventions of 5e. The point of moving the setting to 5e is to make sure that people who don't want to leave 5e can stay there and play the Symbaroum setting. So it would sort of defeat the purpose to change the 5e system too much.
Yeah.
You can, of course, pretty easily turn them around and just have the players do all the roles for everybody. And I prefer that because as a GM, you can spend more time on describing what happens and thinking ahead and doing, making sure it's alive, the world comes alive, rather than keeping track of all the numbers and do all the tactics. And you need to do a bit of that, of course. But that's that's where that the player facing mechanic comes from.
Cool. We've actually just we've had our first winner. Lee, who was that?
It's Will Dockrell.
Will! Well done, Will. We'll get your details, pass your details over to Disco, our moderator, and we'll get a PDF copy of the core rulebook. I'll send the details over to Free League, and then they'll get in contact with you directly. So cycling back to, we mentioned magic. So then here's two questions for magic is, how did you choose and select the magical abilities that you got inside Symbaroum, but also how does magic connect to corruption? Because then it's a hindrance or a character building thing for each player character, because someone who might typically be a wizard will now find that they have different obstacles to overcome.
Yeah, well, it's I'll start with the magic and corruption mechanic. It plays the same in the original and the 5e version. It means that as nature, as I said, the assumption about the world is that nature accepts a certain amount of discipline. You can use the world in certain ways, but if you go too far and start to bend, we're moving towards breaking certain natural, call them laws. You're gonna. The result is you create corruption that's gonna come back at you somehow. And magic is one of those things that literally can't. It usually and there are cases when it can be used, but it always produces corruption. It's even hinted that using magic is pretty easy, but surviving using magic is hard. That's why there are spells and rituals, and you need to do stuff to sort of channel the corruption and make it manageable. So instead of losing, let's say in 5e, you would expend the spell slot to cast a spell. In Symbaroum, you would have nothing to start with, and then you gain corruption, and you can cast as many spells as you want until your corruption reaches a certain threshold. And it's a dynamic thing, so there's an element of randomness to it. So you will often find yourself in a position where I can't get another spell off, but I'm not sure I'll be here after, or I won't be maybe looking exactly the same. I'll get some sort of stigma. So that's so we built it as rather than counting points down, you count points up, if you want to look at it from a sort of mechanical perspective, and have a bit of you can push it. So there's a bit of a gamble in how it comes into play. It's not a thing just for those who actively use magic. Everybody gets it when they get magical items, artifacts, and use those. They will get into the same thing. And certain places in Davokar are dark to the point where you actually get corruption by just spending time there.
Yes, I was going to come on to that with the starter box. There's some really nice areas like that which are just flooded with corruption. Yes. How does corruption affect you both emotionally and physically? Can you explain what the heroes can, what the player characters, I suppose, will do?
It's got an element of body horror to it, so it will twist you in different ways, and some of them might look cool or just scary, and eventually, if you push it far enough, you also might get sensations and ideas that are not wholesome. But if you push it far enough, some of these might become permanent on you, and such as sores that don't heal, or odd tastes in food. You can't eat cooked food, for instance; it needs to be raw. Or it might be you start to develop monstrous features, and eventually to the point that you can actually lose a character by it becoming thoroughly corrupted and just moving over to the side of the GM. That is basic. It's more or less in the player's hands. It doesn't happen. The randomness is not that huge. It just happens. But you might want to gamble on that in certain desperate situations. So it's in there.
Because we mentioned earlier about player races, and you can be undead, but this isn't.
Yes.
This isn't necessarily vampire. It's something else.
Yeah, it's more of there are different origins, and one of them is undead. So it's more of a revenant type.
Yeah.
You return from the dead, but you're very similar to who you were. You're more a symptom that the world is slightly broken and perhaps about to shatter, because it's not supposed to go down like this.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're supposed to stay dead, but you weren't. So something is clearly off. And it's one of those origins that is cool to play, but it's also comes with a caveat, which is a lot of factions will try to murder you proper.
Yep.
By being, it's not a world where there are groups that are not forgiving. Just like if you were thoroughly corrupted or deeply corrupted, witch hunters will come for you. Or the Templars, which is an extreme sect of the Church of Prius, and they've already, in their mind, Prius is already dead. His light has just not faded yet. So they're on the last stand, and they're out for revenge for their dead god, more or less. So they don't really count their losses as much. So they're one of those groups that most players find it hard to be around and manage, because they say they're good guys, but there's nothing in their behavior to indicate they are.
I love that. As well as questions in live chat, we also sent out some to see if people had questions over socials on Twitter. This kind of takes us back to the 5e edition, and at Toothy Moore is asking, what are the main challenges on the rules port to 5e, especially given the tight relationship of the original rule set and the setting? So how complicated has it been to move it to do a 5e edition?
Good question. Almost deserving, I think, maybe it should be a candidate for one of those nifty PDFs, I think.
Hey, if Toothy Moore is in the live audience, you heard it. You could be up for grabs. If you're watching this on YouTube, get in touch. We'll see what we can do.
Yeah. No, certain parts were actually quite easy. The corruption transferred really well. That was surprisingly. I was pretty nervous about that. Another part that was way not harder, but required more work. We knew exactly what we were going to do. It just took time and takes time still. Is the level. The leveling in 5e has no direct. It has a counterpart, of course, in the original game, but it's more open-ended in the original game. You can go many places. You're not really bound by anything. There are suggestions on what you want to do. We call them concepts or archetypes, but you're not really forced to make choices, and you're rarely blocked. The system is pretty forgiving to the point where you can actually build a pretty powerful character if you want to. There's a level of system mastery to the original game, which means you can build powerful characters, and they can also suck if you're not careful. And 5e is better at that. If you want to see it from that way, it keeps everybody more in the same trajectory based on their level. So it's but that was and we've cracked it. So we turned what is essentially 4 to 5 steps of improvement in the original game and moved that over to 20 levels of improvement, which is then more incremental. But I'm pretty comfortable with how it played out. We did a trial balloon, so anybody want to look at the 5e version can go look for Symbaroum 5e, The Promised Land, which is a free primer for the first, I think, 6 levels in a short adventure, The Promised Land.
Yep. So
they can get a glimpse of what we're planning. That's not the final. That was the test balloon, but it's going to be pretty close to that.
There's an expansion to the question as well. Will there be unique stories to the 5e edition, or is there plans to convert any of the previous stories across?
It's a conversion of the game. It's not a separate. It's a separate product line when it comes to system, but it's the same setting and adventures. So the next step would be to convert the Throne of Thorns campaign to 5e.
Yeah.
A lot of the other adventures were part of the Kickstarter, so they will get the 5e treatment. And hopefully we'll get on par with both product lines. So whenever new material comes out, there will be two versions, one 5e and one original, and you get to pick whatever system you prefer. Cool.
We're gonna. Lee's got. I'm looking at all the questions coming in. There's no way we're gonna get to them all. Lee, what we do? Let's do another giveaway. We have another PDF to give away. Matt, we need like a word that people can pull. What word should we use? What's your favourite monster?
Yeah.
What's the name of your favourite monster?
Name of my favorite. That was a hard one. There are many. But you know, you never go wrong with a rage troll. That's never bad.
Okay. So what we're going to do? Rage
troll. That's bad news. So let's do that.
Right. So Steve, who's moderating at the moment, rage troll. When Steve sets that up, we'll have that going as a next giveaway in live chat. So over to you, Steve, and then over to you, Lee, because I know you've got a ton of questions.
I do have a ton of questions. I do. Although, like, asking what your favorite monster is like asking who your favorite child is. And I guess it's a rage troll.
The rage troll.
That is what it's like to have children. Here we go. One of the questions I really liked was I've leaned towards pacifist routes in RPGs via charisma and support classes. Those situations where you have to use your mind, charisma, or underhanded ways to reach a resolution. Yeah. Are there a range of non-combat options in Symbaroum?
Yes.
I like that too, so yeah.
Yeah, it's often the way for both 5e and original Symbaroum, we to make the world feel believable, we've always tried to make sure that we wanted to limit violence by introducing social consequences to violence, as in their friends will be angry. Right? That's one. You can take them, but the friends will be angry. So you might not want to, even if you see, we can take these elves. There's a lot of elves, and they're not going to like you. And that's going to be bad because you're going to spend a lot of time in the forest. So is there another way? That's one. The other one is monsters usually don't attack you unless they think they can take you. And some of them are smart. So they're not going to attack if there's no reason for them to think that violence will be a solution to their problem. So there are many situations where the enemy will not engage you unless they have a reason to think they can take you. There are also creatures like thoroughly corrupted creatures that might not care if they live or die. They might come at you anyway, but they're also really dangerous. So our idea has always been that people who play Symbaroum for a bit usually approach a problem like this. Can we avoid it? Like walk around it? No. Okay, good. Can we negotiate with it? Okay, no. Can we sneak around it? No. Isn't it time to flee? We can't. Damn it. We need to fight, right? Yeah. That's sort of the steps you want to take. So everything you can do to be a charismatic, you can do a lot with lore in as well, to understand a problem and see, like, we don't have to do it like this, or there's a smarter way. So we want to have that part, and we do that that's one of the discussions that we will ask people to have in 5e, because there's less hand-holding in Symbaroum than 5e. In 5e, usually if you have an encounter with something, you can be pretty sure that you can take it in a fight. And then you can choose to argue with them, whatever, if you want to. But generally speaking, you could probably take them in a fight anyway. That's not the case in Symbaroum. You can come up against stuff that will just wipe you out, especially if you don't understand what it is. So, yeah, the short answer to that, to follow my long answer, is there are plenty of options, and they're often the smart choice. at least to begin with.
Okay. Another question we had is for people new to the game. What is Symbaroum? You've talked about it rising again, and the 5e release is the Ruins of Symbaroum. So is this an ancient culture that has now been destroyed, or is it something else?
No, it's a good question. We just wanted to name Ruins of Symbaroum is the 5e version, so we just want that to have a to be immediately recognizable. It's not the same rule system, but it's the same setting. It's follows the same timeline and all that. Symbaroum is an ancient human empire that rose to prominence, and according to the elves and their allies in what's called the Iron Pact, threatened the existence of the known world, so they were destroyed at great cost. And then over the ruins, the elves planted this forest to keep it at bay, because obviously it didn't die, really die, it just almost died, or it lingers still. So that's one, but corruption is not necessarily a feature. Corruption is a function of the world, so to speak. It's a natural force. So you can garner corruption anywhere, not just in Davokar. It's just that it's very dense there because of the history.
That's cool. Okay.
Cool. I can see the list of questions. They just at the moment they keep coming. So we'll try to get through as many questions as we can, everyone.
One of the questions we got is, can you play as a corruptor? Is there a way to do that?
Yes. We call them sorcerers. These are mystics who have understood that if you go deep into the idea of a sorcerer, they would say everybody, they say, you guys, you misunderstand corruption. It's just a natural force like any other. We can use it. It's not dangerous if you know what you're doing. Let me show you, right? That's their view on things. Most other people see a horrible demon summoning mad person that's going to destroy everything and needs to be burned at the stake as soon as possible. So you can play a sorcerer, but you probably have to be careful. It's a bit like playing undead. You need to be very careful about who you talk to about your fantasies and what you want to do in life. You want to keep that. So most of them have some sort of double identity. The cool thing about being a sorcerer, if we're into that, is that you can use other people's corruption against them.
Yeah.
So you can take, and most people have a little corruption. No, very few people are totally pure. So you can take that, and it's basically a modifier to their resistance to your magic. So you want to find someone who's pretty corrupted. That's good for you. So there are ways to use corruption, yes. Yeah, but it's also a danger to you because some people will not like you at all.
Yeah, we got some questions around are there like Easter eggs inside the game that people can find and lock? You know, because we mentioned treasure hunting, but in the books themselves, is there things to explore and uncover during the campaigns, during inside the books? And one of the things that I think Lee noticed, this one, is the poetry inside the books. So you've got the element of the designs, which we've used for our framing designs on Twitch, which are the sidebars, but also the poetry. Is the poetry relevant to the campaigns, or is it just another form of storytelling?
No, it's relevant to the campaign, but it's not relevant in the sense that it will if you read it and get it, it will enrich the experience. And some situations you would probably get leads, but it's not to the point where it's not ciphers that will solve it for you.
Okay.
But if you study the lore of the setting, you can use it inside. It's the idea of the lore is that it's consistent enough to make sense and be usable. So if you've studied as a player, if you understand that rage troll is not the only troll there is, it's just the ones that humans usually meet because they're newborn, they just fell out of a cocoon and they're super hungry. Oof. That's why they rage. When with their stomachs are full, they seek out their kin, and then they're socialized and can be pretty. They're still trolls, but you can talk to them, and they build stuff. And if you know that, you're gonna see a troll and maybe think let's see if it's hungry or not. Because if it's not, back to the question of, can we negotiate with it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it hungry? No, it's seemed to be creating some form of artifact. Good. It's one of the civilized trolls. Let's talk to it, right? So those part that goes through the setting in the sense. So if you understand the setting and you can do that to the poems, you can use that in game.
Can we negotiate with a sandwich? Like,
yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe you can try. You will have to roll pretty good.
But we have something else we wanted to do is while we're here, for everyone who's watching live, we're also going to let's have a quick look through this, and Matt can kind of explain the things that are inside and why they're created, a bit more kind of background. I will flip the screen. Here we go. So everybody, you should be able to see this. Did we get a winner of the second copy? I didn't see. The chat is moving too quick. So this is what you get inside the box. This is what the box looks like. It's a nice, big, strong box, which I like that. This is Treasure Hunts in Davokar. This is the starter set. I will put it in front of my face. There we go. The starter set. Fantastic artwork on there. Nice, big, strong box. And all the breakdown and all the contents of what you get in. And you get quite a lot for your money as well, which is nice to see. And inside, of course, it's the Free League Games catalogue, just to have a look at all the other fantastic things they do. So Alien RPG, and all the different bits you can get. That's all expanded as well now since. But the GM board, the maps, the cards, the dice. The dice are amazing. Fantastic game. I should say, winner of the Gold Ennie Award for Best Game, if you can see that. There you go. Lots of Ennie Awards in these. Free League do fantastic, seriously fantastic games.
We try.
Yeah, and you're winning the awards, which is great to see. And seriously, I know most people kind of start on with general fantasy. You know, obviously it's D&D, but then move on into something else. Move on into, look at what Free League have got. They've got sci-fi and fantasy and everything in between. It's really, really good. Forbidden Lands is another one of my my loves. I absolutely love these stories. And most of the time I just pick up these books to read, just for myself. You know, we do need more time around the gaming table, which we'll get to soon. We'll get back to it this summer.
We did actually have a winner. Chav Hunter has yet again won another giveaway. Congratulations,
well done, Chav. So Chav, just so you know, Matt, Chav is he's won everything. He's our not longest streak winner, although he was at one point. But yeah, I think he wins. He's won on most competitions. So Tales from the Loop is also by Free League. If you enjoyed the TV show, do check this out. Won 5 Gold Ennie Awards: Best Game, Best Interior Art, Best Setting, Best Writing, and the Best Product of the Year. Of course, Symbaroum is in there. As you can see, a whole range of books, expansions, and campaigns. GM Shield, map, won an awards for Best Layouts, Best Design, Best Art, Best Interior. Some fantastic quotes on there as well. This was an interesting quote. This is from John Dodd, Tabletop Gaming Magazine. And the quote is, "The game that has inspired me most this year." Mm-hmm. I mean, again, these stories where when you start reading these books, and I do wholeheartedly encourage picking up the starter box, because there's lots of story-driven content in there. There's lots of background. When you start reading it, it's amazing. You'll want to know more about it. Twilight 2000. This is based on kind of what if there was World War III. And lots of kind of bits and pieces to get with that. It's, again, another fantastic story. Vaesen, as you probably already know, if you've been watching Band of Badgers for a while, our final Vaesen episode was yesterday. Mm-hmm. So you can watch that on Twitch right now. We also have Mutant Year Zero. There we go. And Coriolis. So lots of sci-fi stuff as well. So yeah, Mutant, kind of Mad Max with mutants, and Coriolis. But Mutant has been around for a while now. That's also a winner of a Silver Ennie Award for Best Rules, and the Best Judges Spotlight for Coriolis. And of course, Mork Borg. That's a serious one.
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants to talk about here.
Yeah. So in the box set, you get the little catalog. You also get a 6 set of dice. I don't know if they're all the same, but this is the green. It matches the books, so it goes quite well. So you get a set of standard 6 dice, and then inside, let's start. We got a kind of almost an A3 map handout. This is a map of Ambria and Dovahkiin. This is Dovahkiin, the Dark Forest. It might get too much reflection from my light, and you're not going to see too much of the detail. But if I put that up there. Thistlehold is where the campaign starts. What was the tell us more about Thistlehold. How was that created?
It's a town created by a very successful treasure hunter who found a certain kind of thistle in the forest that can actually help sick people, and he gives it to the queen's mother. Mm-hmm. He gifted her with that, so she gave him a town as a thank you. So it's become a haven for treasure hunters and people who want to explore the forest for whatever reason. Also, the Queen's Rangers are based there. They're actually requiring you to buy a permit to go into the forest. Mm-hmm. It's one of those places. And Queen wants a cut. Yeah.
I love in the map, in the illustration as well. I have to put this in front of my head like this. So where you see at the southern edge of the forest itself, you can find these places which have already been discovered, and then the more north you go, undiscovered lands. It's really, and yet there are the hints. You've got a volcano there, and it looks to be like a crater hole there or something there. I don't know. I have to find out.
It's one of the bigger sinkholes in the forest.
Oh, one of the sinkholes. Oh, there's a sinkhole further down as well. It is Jarrek's. There we go, Jarrek's sinkhole. I'm going to try and line that up on the camera. That's going to be terrible. Yeah, we're going completely the wrong direction. There we go.
You got it. Yeah.
Here it is. So, fantastic map. Plus, you get a map of the town.
Yep.
So, all the key locations are marked on there, and you get a breakdown of each one it is. What the thing I like most about the town, so you have this protection wall, the outer wall.
Yeah.
And then there's a pathway all the way around on the inside, which is called the long way round. And where are you going? I'm going to go the long way round. Yeah. And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's an amazing. I love the sense of humor in that one. That is amazing. I do like that. So you get the map, you get the dice. You also get 2 smaller books. These are the starter rule set. Mm-hmm. Much smaller than the core rule book. This is a condensed rule book. So it's easier to get you started in. There's an idea of what the character sheets might look like. The box also contains 6 pre-gen characters, so you don't have to kind of rip them out of the back. This is just to kind of let you know how it works and what all the things are. Just labels everything on the character sheet.
Oh, one of the things I liked when I was looking through this was the idiot-proof combat chart. I've never picked up a role-playing game. I've never played picked up a dice before. I don't know what I'm doing. This one, the chart in there was really helpful for me to understand how things worked and how things flowed, and to really see how a game could be played. There it is, the quick guide for combat. I love that. Yes. Because other games, I'm sitting there flipping back and forth, and okay, so I need to use this many dice to have this many, and then I have to do this, and there are these modifiers, and I need to know. And it's no, this is for me, who I've never done this before. Now I know how to do it, and it makes it a lot easier and a lot smoother. And I love that it was just very easy to read and easy to follow the step. You used to 1, 2, 3, 4, done.
Mm-hmm. What was the reasoning behind that, Matt?
Well, we hope for the reaction we got from Lee now.
Yeah.
People feel that it's always daunting when you go into a new system. You never played, or you played something that is not like this. Mm-hmm. So the question is how quickly can you become comfortable with this new setup? Because you as a GM, you're going to have to explain it to the players. Mm-hmm. So at least have a bit of a grasp of it before you do. So that's why we came to that conclusion. So,
yeah. I was also going to say, I think Steve Disco, the moderator, not only is he putting links to the Kickstarter projects on there, I think there's also a link to the Free League shop where you can buy this. So again, if you like it, buy it. Why not?
To what level does the starter set rules cover you?
This is the original game. The 5e version, the Ruins of Symbaroum, isn't released yet. So this is the native system that we created for the original game. So it's a beginner level, but it's not a 5e compatible. It's
okay.
This is the original.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the original. Because I noticed that there had been some differences. So I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah.
Okay,
Can we go back to some of the other questions we got?
Go ahead, yeah. No particular order.
Because one of the questions that we got that was unrelated specifically to Symbaroum, but the differences between the two settings. Is there any advice for things to watch for when you're adapting a setting between editions? Things that you ran into, or any general tips for any independent creators who might want to create their own settings for these rules?
Sure. First off, maybe self-explanatory, but you need to decide what your setting is about and what is important to keep. And you need to also then maybe have a list of stuff that you're prepared to not stick to. Because every system, the game works if the system and the world go in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
And I view the Ruins of Symbaroum and the original Symbaroum game are kindreds in spirit, but they're not identical in detail. So certain things, our idea is you should be afraid of the same stuff for the same reason, but the mechanics is going to differ. You're not going to do things exactly the same way, but you're going to understand that certain things are bad for you. Corruption is, everybody understands that corruption, you risk being totally corrupted yourself, and you push it by casting that extra spell that might save the day, but it might also be the end of you. So that's going to be in both systems, but it's not exactly the same numbers in play. They differ. So you need to, what is it you want to keep, and what are you prepared to move in terms of mechanics to get there? Another one that I like a lot, that I try to do, but not always succeed, but is I want people who play the game by the numbers, the min-maxers or the people that apply the math hammer and just want to win because the number says so. They should end up in the same place that people who want to understand the lore and want to play like the world is supposed to be. They should probably do the same choices. So they should point to the same place. So from another perspective, another game that you mentioned in the catalog was Coriolis, where prayers are more important. Everybody can pray and get a bonus. So people pray if you like the lore, you pray before you go into the spaceship and you move into space. But people who like +1 also pray because they want the +1. But so most people just pray before the ship take off.
Yeah.
So simple stuff like that. You want to what you want players to do, reward it in terms of mechanics, even if it's just a little. But also put it into the lore, like this is what people do in this world. So whether you're an immersive player or more of a numbers player, you're probably going to end up doing roughly the same thing. That would be
I was just going to say that the again, so this is quickly just a second book. This is a setting and adventures. While you've been talking, I've been flicking around through that. Again, the artwork is just incredible.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, look at that.
I'm stunned. Martin Grip is.
I mean, also when so Matt, when we've spoken before, you mentioned you also have a background in computer games.
Yes.
Again, like the stylization from computer games into role-playing games. What have you found there to be easier, or is it you can do more in a tabletop game?
Well, they're totally different. They have some things in common. You need to be clear on what player fantasy you're catering to, or player fantasies, as there are probably more than one. What do you want? What do you think? Why do you think people want to experience the thing that you're making? And then you need to build a product that allows them to do that. And it's probably several that they should be overlapping, so it's not just an open toolbox is really hard to make sense of. It needs to have some sort of focus. So what do you do in the game? You can count on the players in RPGs, in tabletop RPGs, to fix. You can cut corners in tabletop RPGs in a sense, because the players will themselves map out what is not there. Because it's theater of the mind anyway, so you can basically jump from one picture to another and ignore the gap in between. That you can't do that in as easy in a computer game. People will see the gaps and be annoyed by them if it's a lot of visuals in it. So there's stuff you can do, but of course there's also a lot of stuff you can do in a computer game. You can handle things on the back end, remove the math from the player. You can't in a tabletop RPG, so you need to keep the math relevant for what the game is about.
Yeah.
Would there be any? Would you ever convert Symbaroum into a computer game?
Or a movie? That was the question that we got asked.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I wouldn't. I would not trust myself to make a movie. That would be a horrible thing. You should know what you're good at, and then let other people do what they're good at. Of course, I'd love to see a Symbaroum movie. I could imagine a Symbaroum role-playing game on a computer as well, for sure. But it's very different skill sets. And I'm more of a producer type. I'm not a coder, so I could go there, and I'm definitely not an artist. Martin Grip, who's done most of the art for Symbaroum. We also have a guy called Gustav Enerlund who's really good as well, but Martin is the lead. Martin Grip is the lead artist. He also has a background in computer games, so he's a environment artist who's done a lot. So certain skills transfer pretty well, and some skills really don't.
Yeah.
So.
Let's see.
We've got. Let's do another giveaway. We've got a few more to do. So this will be for the third PDF core rulebook. Matt, would you like to generate a name? What code name can we use? And while you're thinking about that, what we got here is I'm just going to flick through the core rulebook on a small screen so everyone can see how lovely these are. And again, this is a nice big thick book.
Yeah, we call it 7 League Stride. That's a ritual in the core.
7 League Stride! Exclamation point! 7 League Stride for the new giveaway.
There you go, Steve. Type that one out. Everyone's like 7. 7 League Stride.
7 Free League Stride.
That's nice.
Yeah. One of the questions we got is there a way to counter corruption as you get it?
Yes. The first stage of corruption is called temporary corruption, and you can more or less rest that off. You can just stop accumulating more for a bit, and it will slowly fade away. In 5e, you would have to spend hit dice to do that. But again, it would be tied to the rest mechanic. When you have permanent corruption, you're in a bad place. You can get rid of it. There are thurgs a thurg is basically sort of a priest with mystical powers. Most priests don't have any mystical powers, but some do, and they can help you. Some of them, and there are some other ways of doing it, but it's not. It's a slippery slope. Once you've started accumulating permanent corruption, you need to be even more careful, and it's going to stay with you for a long time, and maybe your entire life.
Oof.
Or the PC's life, of course.
Can you pass on corruption to your children through the bloodline?
Not as such, but there are actually nasty sorcerer's ways to pass on your corruption to other people. So you cast a spell, you get corruption, you pass it on to somebody who's close to you.
Oh.
Ooh.
Bad people, sorcerers.
Like physically close, or like your best friend?
Well, it could be both, can it? But
yeah, but I mean, like, is it like a sorceress whipping boy?
You probably have to be within line of sight.
Okay.
That's the ritual in the game that allows you to. Well, this can introduce another term. We call it shadow, right? People with the second sight can see the amount of corruption that creatures and items and places have, or people.
Mm-hmm.
So people who have lots of corruption have a good reason to hide it, because certain witch hunters have that power and use it. But then you have a ritual that allows you to switch shadow with someone, and they don't have to agree. You just do it. So you can walk around and look really innocent, and somebody else has to walk around with your shadow and possibly be burned at the stake for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also an option that I've used plenty in my game. It took a while for my players to realize that they were actually chasing people who were absolutely innocent.
So coming back to the 5e and the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter's now wrapped up.
Yeah.
Can people still? Is late pledging going to be opened, or is it open now?
It is not open now. It will be.
Okay.
There's a link on the Kickstarter page, and of course on Free League webpage, where you can sign up for the newsletter and get a ping when we open up the pledge manager, where you can do late pledges.
Yeah.
Yes, it will be available, but it isn't yet.
And what's next for Symbaroum as a whole? Is there a new campaign in the work for this year? Are we going to see something new this year?
Well, the Throne of Thorns campaign is meant to be a 6-part saga.
Yeah.
And the 5th had a pre-order right now. So the 6th part will come sometime next year.
Okay.
And we will also tackle trying to get it into Ruins of Symbaroum, of course. All of the books, one way or another, so we can come up to par. We don't really have a clear idea of where to go after that. We have a couple of options, but I would have to get back to you on that. So, but that's further ahead.
I love your layout on these books. I'm just
It
it
is beautiful. I mean,
it's so yeah.
For those of you who know my background, I'm a designer. I've done I mostly do like apps and stuff like that, working with experimental tech. But I started in graphic design and layouts for Cosmopolitan magazine. But it's great. It's so simple and intuitive to read, to break through. Everything is done beautifully. Most of it's on the kind of the double column, or you got a triple column layout. Huge, big, glossy pictures. The artwork, we keep saying the artwork is stunning, but it really, really is. And everything's broken. There's no waffle. I waffle, but the book does not. Everything is information you can use. And I love that.
One of the things I love about the artwork is it reminds me of these sort of natural sculptures you see around here. I don't know if it's necessarily true in Sweden. I've never been to Sweden, but you can just go out walking on any sort of path, and then you'll just randomly stumble across this wooden sculpture that's just been carved and is standing out there in the middle of nowhere, or you'll find like this little stone statue underneath a bush that looks like an owl. And I really love that because it feels very representative of that sort of connection with natural spirits and forest gods as a way, like you were talking about with Princess Mononoke, and that sort of element to it. It also reminded me a lot of when I went to Japan and I was walking through these Shinto shrines. You would see this sort of same element there. So I really love that you can bring it and you can actually see that idea translated into what it would look like as a actual physical being, as a person, instead of the ideal.
I mean, the animistic tradition strong in Shinto is also used to exist in Europe to a great extent, and it's always one of those things where when you grow up, when they're like, you can find traces of Stone Age people making carvings in the rocks not close to where you live, or you have the mounds of heathen kings outside of the town where you live, or sort of Bronze Age ship graves or whatever around you. That's you, and those were so seriously pre-Christian pagan times. A lot of course that if that feeling of a past that exists around you that is still there, thousands of years old, or at least 1,000 years and more, or something that we wanted to, that we like and want to keep in the world, and it makes the world, of course, feel more alive. Things have been here before, and you can find them, or at least just pass them. You pass them by when you move on to somewhere else.
What's really interesting to me as an outsider, as somebody who's not grown up with this, is like I can turn to my husband and go, "Oh, what's that about? Why is there a statue there?" And he's like, "Oh, I don't know. It's just always been there." And it's like, maybe if you dig into it, you can find, oh, it's actually been there since the Bronze Age. Yeah. So it's one of those. Wow, this is really like you're living with it. I'm American, so we don't have that history behind us in the same sense, in the same way, and any history that does exist, we really kind of lost our connection to it. But here it's literally everywhere. You can't avoid it, and it's really kind of cool to see, as someone who doesn't have that, to just, oh, okay, so you are that deeply connected to your past, and you can actually see the influences here today.
Yeah, and I mean, there are, of course, places on Earth who have that way more than, let's say, Sweden have, but where people, I love the, when you're in somewhere around the Mediterranean or Egypt or something, and you have like a market, and you have, you can imagine somebody in ancient times just leaning against that pillar and watching the sky and thinking about the world, and now people are just applying the traits there, and if they look up, they see the same stars and all that. So I think that's awesome. You want to capture that sense that with history sort of layered, on top of each other. That's what I think is the cool part. And it exists, of course, in many places, but capturing that sense that you move in a world that's old and has existed for a long time, and try and find, not to be too production focused on it, but you do that with you have a certain economy when you produce a book. What pictures do you need? What do you want to show? How can you tell a lot with the pictures without being, overbearing and just forcing people to read or understand? It should be a feeling they have when they flip through the book, or again, getting into it quickly is important, so it doesn't become a drag on the experience trying to start a campaign. Being scared to start playing because I need to study the setting first. There's an element of that, but it can't be too much of it.
But I mean, there is, but absolutely. But it's something that you sort of elevate from the everyday and ordinary as you learn more about it. Like, oh yeah, okay, so there's this little owl. Oh, it's the statue of this owl spirit that's protected this place for hundreds of years. Oh, it's still here. Okay. And it's just one of those things where it feels very deep and resonant and well thought out, and I really love that about it.
I would try to just have that sense of,
Oh, and here we go. Do we have any locations based on other fantasy or real world places in the world of Symbaroum?
Sure, but it's not a simple. Again, avoid trying to take a place and just translate it. It's more about being inspired by something. We often think that works best if you recognize it, but you're not sure from where, rather than, this is it. I know that I've been there. This is that Crusader, castle in Turkey that everybody visits when they're there. It's not like that. It's more of a trying to find a couple of references and move them together. And the way we create these books and all our games is, let's say I write something and I send it to Martin Grip for him to make a picture of it. And then he makes a picture of something else, which quite often happens, and sends it back. And I'm like, that was way better. And then I rewrite to fit whatever he draw. So he draws something, and I fit the story to that. So it's sort of a back and it's not really we write something and it's put on in turned into an illustration. It's often how it goes back and forth, and some of the monsters or even phenomenon in the game actually was him just oodling away and just what is this? I'm like, I don't know, but it needs to be in the game. Let's find out. Right? So it sort of moves in circles creatively. That is not so much it's not a blueprint we follow. It's more of a world where we think of it as discovering it more.
Does the gamer system allow you to build your own worlds and lands?
Depends on what you mean. You can, if you have the advanced, the Game Master's Guide, there's support for being the Lord of the land, or you can, exactly that one. Mm-hmm. There's a chapter based, first that we discuss how we build worlds and world building, because we think being explicit about that can help people modify the world to what they want it to be. Not everybody wants this place or this world to be exactly like we imagined it. So we explain a bit about where we come from and how we thought about it, so you can get into our thought process and then take it to whatever place you want to go. There are also rules. The other way of interpreting that question is, can your player characters become lords in the world? And they can, and there are rules to support how you would have a domain. You can either be a successful treasure hunter and buy stuff, or you can be a free thinker, or you maybe you're part of the old faith of the religion that is hunted and moves into the forest to start a colony somewhere where you can pray to whatever god you like and screw the queen and her ideas, right? So all of that stuff can be part of how you wanna set that up.
Cool. What we're gonna do, because we're running out of time, we're running a little bit over. We have the starter box up for grabs, everybody. So we are going to draw a winner for this one. We're in the last. Steve just said we're in the last minute for the previous giveaway. But we're going to do this. So Matt, we need a new code word. What can we do for this one?
Okay, let's take changeling then.
Yeah,
Ooh,
I like
changelings.
the changelings. Yeah,
cool. We've also got
cool.
Tabletop Santa. Hi Rick. You've got some.
Oh, I can try this one. I'm going to try and mangle Swedish.
Go ahead.
From Tabletop Santa we have: Hej Mattias, hur mår du idag? Vad inspirerar dig att skapa den här världen?
That was actually quite good. It was a Danish version of Swedish, but they're sort of similar. So
yeah,
good. So what inspires me, and I feel fine. Thank you.
There you go. Well done, Rick. Thank you. Does that one win a copy of the book?
I think that one.
There you go.
There you go.
That was good. There's tons of inspiration for this. The game has been in the making for many years. It actually grew out of a campaign that we ourselves played, where the heroes defeated the main enemy of the campaign, but the main enemy cast a final spell that killed the land, so that everybody needed to move into another place. So it became like an Exodus story that followed the campaign. That was actually the starting point for. It's not there were very few other points that has anything to do with Symbaroum, but there was a sort of, we imagined that as the starting point for Symbaroum. Like, what do you do when your country is when the land is dying and you need to move far away and set up a new world? That was the first question that we started with when we got into this. The other stuff just tumbled from there.
Nice.
We did get a winner for the last PDF copy of the core rulebook, and that was Carlos Valois. I think that's how you say it.
Yep.
So good job for him. And then now we're on to Changeling, exclamation point Changeling, to win the starter set.
So as soon as Steve says it's okay to do it,
yeah,
then we can do it. So Steve, over to you. There we go. So this is to win a copy of this. Okay, so it won't be this one because this one's mine. But we will send the details over. Get in touch with Disco moderator. We will need your full name, your email address, your Twitch handle, and then we'll send that over to Free League with all the other winners, and they'll get in contact directly and send out the winnings to you. So make sure you enter. This is for the box set. You already saw it on like about 20 minutes ago of me going through it. It's a really good set. I highly encourage you. And if you don't win, go and buy it. You will not be disappointed. I promise you. It's really good. Fantastic. And then you got another question from Rick there. Where in Sweden are you from, Matt?
I'm from Umeå, which is up north. I live in Stockholm now, or the Stockholm area. So it's not quite the polar circle, but the Arctic Circle, but it's close. But
have you ever been to the Fiddlers Festival?
Fiddlers Festival? I don't think so. Oh, in Dalarna?
Yeah.
Actually, no. Which is I'd love to go, but I haven't.
There we go. Right. We're gonna wrap up very soon. So last fire questions. Here we go. Quick fire round. What have we got, Lee? What's lined up? What can we do as a quick fire questions?
Hold on. Now I've got dang. Do you write in Swedish or in English when you're writing these?
Yeah.
Symbaroum is originally written in Swedish, but we also write some of our books. We write directly in English. Depends on. Yeah, it depends. We do both.
What's the difference between Ambria and the barbarian clans? What makes one civilized or not civilized?
The main difference is that the Ambrians are more powerful militarily speaking, so they decided who was civilized and not. I think is the main definition. But the Ambrians have a hierarchical system that is more advanced technologically, and the barbarians are more in tune with the forest and know the elves and have lots of taboos that makes it possible for them to live in the forest and without provoking its anger or rather suffering its corruption. So there are two different styles of life that clash in this area.
What is your favorite class and or race of character?
Oh, good. Nice one.
Ooh, that's hard. I like to play lore based characters if I can. Not necessarily. You can be a scholar without being a mage in Symbaroum, which I like. You know a lot about monsters and poisons and medicine and tactics and whatever, and it actually matters. So that is what I prefer to play. That's my preferred in Symbaroum, at least.
All right, let's see if Disco is ready. Steve, if you're out there, can you pull the one-arm bandit and pick a winner? Let's see. Again, he's going to be 10 seconds behind me saying that. So we'll wait and see.
While we wait for that, what's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Favorite ice cream? Is this a Symbaroum ice cream?
In general.
I don't know about Symbaroum ice cream. I like salty licorice in almost all forms.
It's awful.
No, you're just not indoctrinated properly.
Here I go, live stream. Gonna eat some salty licorice.
No.
So they can't accuse me you're not trying it.
That's good. It doesn't have to be super. There's super salty ones that are not very good. But, and it's pretty good in ice cream as well. So I would go. You can dissolve it in hard liquor and drink it. That's also nice, or not nice, but good. So, or eat that is. Eat as is.
We have a winner, Baron Snowhand. Well done. You've won the starter box set. Well done.
Nice.
Congrats, Baron.
We are going to wrap it up there, folks. Thank you to Matt. Thank you for joining us. That was great to come and just hang out, answer some questions, talk about Symbaroum. Lee, thank you for being co-pilot. That was fantastic. We'll be doing this again, I'm sure, very soon. And for everyone watching, thank you so much for watching. Whether it's on Twitch now, whether it's on 6 months' time, and on YouTube in the future, pick up Symbaroum. You will not be disappointed. It's a great game. whether it's a 5th edition or whether it's the original edition, the story, the characters, the world, the setting is beautiful. And not just the artwork, but it's beautiful. So do pick it up, and we will be playing it over summertime. So we'll be going through the starter book, and we'll probably also be kicking off the Throne of Thorns. We got time to go because part 6 isn't out until 2022. So we have lots of time between now and then to go and do this. We've hoped you've enjoyed it. Something a little bit different from Badgers doing this kind of thing. So it was good. Matt, again, thank you for joining us. I hope that was okay for you.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I love the setup. I like the interview combination with unboxing or
I think it makes sense because there's if we do an unboxing, I can say it's great, it's fab, but then you can say what went into the hard work that has gone into this. Again, everybody, it's worth the money. Pick it up. You will not be disappointed. It's
exactly. I mean, you want to see it's the proof's in the pudding, right? It's the what comes out of all the talking and then writing. It's one of those boxes. So yeah, I like that concrete connection. That's nice.
Fantastic. Right, we're going to sign off there, everybody. Thank you for watching.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Matt.
Take care.
Thank you.
Be back
Bye,
soon. Bye.